In this lesson, we're going to look briefly at a cell membrane because it's related to what we talked about those semi-permeable membranes. We're not going to get into completely into the structure of the cell. We'll leave that for the biology class, but just some basic features of its structure. The main component of a cell membrane are what are known as phospholipids. And so lipids are the same thing what we call fats. And so a phospholipid actually has this phosphate group kind of attached to the head of this. So we have two fatty acids or two carboxylic acid tails. So these are very long carbon chains. And as a result, these are very non-polar because they're primarily carbon or they're only carbons and hydrogens. Our top part would be polar, and another way we can describe this is hydrophilic because it's water, and philic means to love, so it's water loving. And so polar things, like dissolves like, polar things are water loving. When I look at the other end, our nonpolar end of the molecule, I see it described as the hydrophobic. And phobic means afraid, so fear of water. It's repelled by water. It doesn't like that. And so nonpolar substances don't dissolve in water. And so we can also describe that as hydrophobic. So what happens are these phospholipid molecules come together and we see that we get all of the polar heads here attracted to one another along the top and along the bottom. And then in between, we see all the nonpolar or the hydrophobic tails are attracted to one another by side as well as in the other layer. Because remember, this is in an aqueous environment, so outside the cell, okay, we have aqueous, so water-based, and so these polar ends must be near the water. The hydrophobic ends are basically hiding on the inside to stay away from that water molecules. Now the layer is primarily made up of these phospholipids. There are also some other molecules, some carbohydrates, some proteins, and various other species, but they are a very minor component of the membrane compared to these phospholipids. So here's an example of a cell membrane showing some of the other species that are present. Notice that these molecules represent the phospholipids that make up the majority of the membrane. And we see that there are proteins, cholesterol, there are some carbohydrate molecules attached here. We have glycoproteins, which are a protein with a carbohydrate. And I'm not worried about you identifying specific species. The important thing to remember is that multiple things are present in these cell membranes. In this case, we also see these channel proteins because what they do is allow things to pass through the membrane, but they only allow certain things to pass through. We also see things like the sodium-potassium pump that allows things in and out of the cell.